The water communion has become a tradition in Unitarian Universalism over the past 3 decades. It started as an ingathering ritual in which people would bring water from various places they traveled during the summer and pour them together, sometimes accompanied by stories of summer adventures. It was a way of marking the time when many Unitarian Universalists come back to church after being gone for the summer. But that way of doing the ceremony, frankly, assumes some things I don't want to assume. I don't want to assume that we all travel over the summer. And if we do, I don't assume that everyone wants to hear about my adventures in the Maldives. I've never been there, but those of us who can't afford far-flung adventures in this particular year, we're maybe not so fond of that way of doing the ceremony. So some abandoned the tradition. But over the past several years, many Unitarian Universalists have begun to reimagine what the water communion could be. I see it as Bob said in his welcome, an extension of the ancient religious use of water in ritual. So today we'll celebrate our water communion in a new and ancient way. We'll join our ancestors from millennia past in using water to remember our common source, to remember our common connection with all that is. We come from water. Billions of years ago, a tiny, simple organism somehow sprung to life. We still don't know exactly how. And with a few steps in between, here we are. Breathing, thinking, loving, promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing beings, described less poetically by paleontologist Andy Knoll as bags of carbon and oxygen and hydrogen. Can you believe it? How strange it is that this has happened. Out of all the possibilities, you and I have been given the temporary gift of consciousness. And we're sitting here this morning, inhaling and exhaling, part of an interdependent web of existence that includes such improbable creatures as the saguaro cactus, the Venus flytrap, the rattlesnake, so wonderfully weird. People and peacocks, whales and wheatgrass, what wonder. We come from the water. The water that is our source is one of the oldest substances in the universe. In fact, when the sun came into being 4.6 billion years ago, water was already around. Most scientists believe that more than half of the water on the earth comes from an abundant supply of interstellar ice that was around when the sun was forming. It also seems this ice formation may have been a regular part of some planets coming into existence, which means the source of Earth's water probably deposited water here and there around the universe. It is in Earth's share of this ancient water that life as we know it sprung up. Progressive theology is, in a way, science in the form of poetry and metaphor. Another way of talking about what is. Some say we're all children of the same God. Or the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King from the Birmingham jail. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught, he wrote, in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Or, a favorite of mine, the quote from Justine Garter, a hydrogen atom in a cell at the end of my nose was once part of an elephant's trunk. A carbon atom in my cardiac muscle was once in the tail of a dinosaur. We are all of us from the water. And the water that is on earth now is the water that has always been here. We carry this ancient source of life around in us. Water, for which it seems to me the word God is a fitting metaphor, is in the eyes and noses and fingertips of every single person we come across. When we forget this, we suffer and cause others to suffer. How strange it is, even sometimes deadly, that we vessels of skin and bone and water, of such similar biology, continually work to separate ourselves from one another. Republican, Democrat, Independent, all ethnicities, identities, social classes, as diverse as we are all from the water. Over the eons, it seems human beings have been drawn back to the water for recreation, for travel, to find our way to a new home. The waters in Eastern Europe have borne millions of refugees this year. Some estimate 19 million people this year alone have been driven from their homes. 4 million at least from Syria alone. And the shores have delivered up the bodies of people fleeing from war and poverty, some of those bodies alive and some of them dead, to the planet's wealthiest countries. Religion is crystal clear. Some say religion is impractical on what to do. Let them all in. Moses stands before the people as they enter the promised land and says, "Cursed be anyone who deprives the immigrant of justice." Muhammad himself was a constant immigrant who likened himself to a person who stops to rest in the shade of a tree and then moves on. The Gospel of Matthew portrays Jesus as a child of refugees who escaped a violent dictator in the dead of night. All the Abrahamic religions and other faiths as well remind us of our common source and command us to be kind to those of our siblings who seek refuge. To welcome not just 10,000 of them, not just 100,000, but as many as we possibly can. We, all of us, come from the water. Today, we'll participate in our annual water communion. I'll ask you to come forward on whichever side is convenient for you. And let either Bob or me bless your hands with water. This water is just water. It's not going to turn into anything else. I don't think. It came from the tap in our kitchen. And before that, maybe the Colorado. And before that, with a couple steps in between, the stars. It's been around a long, long time. Who has this water been a part of on its journey to us? What shores has this water touched as it made its way to Valley UU this morning? As you make your way forward, let this communion remind you of our ancient shared source, so precious, connecting every living being.